Hi, today I will go over gene inheritance using my favorite book series, Harry Potter. Pictured here is a pedigree with 3 generations of Harry's family, which starts with his grandparents on his father's side, Flemmont and Euphemia, and on his mother's side, Mr. and Miss Evans. Flemmont and Euphemia are the parents of James, who is Harry's father. Mr. and Miss Evans are the parents of Lily, Harry's mother, and Lily's sister, known as Aunt Petunia. This is Aunt Petunia's husband, Vernon, and their son, Dudley, whom Harry is not fond of. The trait being discussed today is magical ability. I will now go over the various modes of inheritance. Autosomal inheritance is when the trait is attached to a non-sex chromosome and can be either dominant or recessive. Sex-linked inheritance is when the trait is attached to either the X or Y chromosome. If attached to the X, it can be dominant or recessive. If attached to the Y, it will be passed down by the father to all male offspring. Let's look at the modes of inheritance on a pedigree, starting with X-linked recessive. This mode of inheritance is not consistent with the following pedigree because Mr. and Miss Evans both possess the dominant M allele, while Lily is recessive for that trait. As for the X-linked dominant mode of inheritance, this mode is also not consistent with the pedigree because Mr. and Miss Evans both possess the little m allele, while Lily possesses the dominant allele for magic. Neither Mr. nor Miss Evans could have possessed the dominant allele down to her, so this mode is impossible for this pedigree. Looking at the autosomal dominant mode, we see that this mode is not consistent with this pedigree either. The reason is that Lily has the dominant allele for magic, while both of her parents, Mr. and Miss Evans, are recessive for the trait and do not show magical ability, so Lily could not possibly receive the dominant big M. The autosomal recessive mode of inheritance is consistent with the following pedigree. Mr. and Miss Evans are both dominant for the allele, however they must be heterozygous, because that allows Lily to be recessive for the trait, and her sister, Aunt Petunia, to be dominant. So assuming Mr. and Miss Evans are heterozygous, this mode of inheritance is consistent with the following pedigree, allowing Lily to inherit the magical ability, so that she can pass it on to her son Harry, who will eventually become the greatest wizard ever. Finally, we have the Wildlings mode of inheritance, which is not consistent with the following pedigree. The reason is that only males could possess the allele for magic, meaning it would be impossible for Lily to inherit the magic allele from her dad, Mr. Evans. Also, Mr. Evans does not even have the magic allele himself, so there is no way he could pass it on. Alright, hopefully today you learned something about gene inheritance from Harry Potter's pedigree. Here are the sources I used to get the images and external information needed for the presentation.